What's up, fellow internet denizens? I am taking on probably the greatest challenge I have done yet, and that is ranking every dragon ever. These will be drawing from fantasy, mythology, and real life. I was kind of inspired by Wendigoon's Ranking Every Cryptid series. We are starting off with books that I've read, except Dragonology because that's just a guidebook and it feels like cheating at this point. I'm also counting Naga, Basilisks, Hydras, and so on because big magic lizards are cool. I am not including Kirin and cockatrices because in most depictions they're not really lizards, but I'm noting that here because some people consider them dragonkin, and the line between dragon and dragonkin / dragon adjacent will get very blurry later on. What am I looking for in a good dragon? Intelligence, strength, cool powers, uniqueness, mystique, variety, and screen time. Also, my ratings of the dragons are not related to my opinions of the book. A book can be great but still have trash tier dragons, or a book can be trash and still have awesome dragons. Additionally, C tier isn't bad, it's just your standard run-of-the-mill dragons, or dragons we don't see enough of. Also, spoilers for the following series. Well, without further ado, let's talk about dragons! So, first we have The Last Dragon Chronicles. Fun fact, as a kid I made my first conlang based on the snarling noises these dragons made. It was tonal and only had like 6 consonants and 2 vowels, but it was cool. Anyway, all of the dragons here have names that start with G in order to commemorate their goddess. Most are made out of clay, imbued with the dragon's last tear, though some are hibernating under the earth's crust. Every one of the little clay fellas has their own power, like inspiring people, smelling nice, and uploading stuff to the internet. I am giving the dragons in this series a solid B, because aside from the clay dragons, it's not really defined what the bigger dragons can do, and when they finally do show up, the author switches his focus to invisible fairies and some weird dimensional bullshit. Can you tell I have opinions about this series? Next up, we got The Paper Bag Princess. This was my favorite bedtime story growing up. Here, the dragon burns an entire castle to ash and kidnaps a prince, leaving nothing behind but a princess, a melted crown, and a large paper sack. Don't question it, this was a kid's book. I'm giving him a C because while this dragon is strong enough to incinerate stone and fast enough to fly around the globe, he's lazy and easily tricked. The Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. Easily slain by a Vorpal blade as soon as he appears. He's got flaming eyes, but that's about it. I think he deserves the lowest dregs of D tier. I'd put him at F, but F is reserved for something special. You'll see. The Dresden Files. I have read all of the main series and only like 2 of the short stories, so I have only encountered a total of 1 dragon. Ferrovax, and he's only ever seen in his human form. Everything we know about him is terrifying, but we haven't seen him act on any of this. Is he all talk? Who knows? High D tier until he does something. The Cosmere. We don't really see dragons often in the Cosmere. In fact, in the canon works, we have only encountered 2. One of them is the goddess Cultivation, and she seldom shows her true form. The other one, Xyzis, appears in dragon form and he's dangerously crafty. However, we're not really shown what dragons can do aside from grant boons, enslave, research, and be shard bearers. I can't in good conscience put them in S tier because we haven't seen enough of them, but I like what I've seen from them. I love the power and mystique, so I'm putting them in low A. Forgotten Realms. There are several dragons in Faerun, from the evil Shimmergloom who chased Brunner's clan out of Mithril Hall, to the alluring Ilnajara and Tasmakella who aided Jarlaxle in the fight against the Lich Zhengyi. Dragons here are ancient, gigantic, well in their dragon form, and hyper-intelligent. Most of them anyway. Themberchaud is absolutely stupid. I love the variety between them. They're somewhat rare to encounter in Faerun, but there are enough of them that if you adventure for a long time, you will encounter one. Much like how, if you birdwatch enough, you might find a sandhill crane. I'm putting these in S tier. The Dragon Jousters. Imagine a giant Canada goose that needs to eat heroin in order to be obedient, unless he is already imprinted on you as soon as he hatched. They don't have a breath weapon and they just serve as giant, terrifying mounts for the Jousters. I'm giving them a C because while they're unique, they're missing intelligence, mystique, and a breath weapon. Custard the Dragon. This was another of my favorite bedtime stories. I was so jealous of Belinda. I love Custard. He starts off as a silly, lovable dork, but he grows into a great big hero when his friend is attacked by a pirate. He is by no means cunning or mysterious, but he is a friend, and that is all that matters here. High B. Harry Potter. Dragons are animalistic monsters who breathe fire here. They don't really appear that often because they're treated like an endangered species and held in specialized locations. Norberta was cute though. see. Wheel of Time. Unfortunately, since Rand al'Thor is not a real dragon, doesn't turn into a dragon, and no other dragons show up in the series, I am putting the Dragon Reborn in F tier. Sorry, them's the rules. Yeah, I'm also not counting the Raken from the Cianchin Isles. They're not really even described apart from the fact that they just look weird. Priory of the Orange Tree. Here, there are several types of dragons. There are Eastern-style dragons who allow humans to ride them. Some Eastern dragons are even worshipped as gods. There are also Wyrms, who are evil and breathe fire. There are several subsets of Wyrms that all have different capabilities. Some dragons speak, some don't. I think this is awesome. Again, I love seeing diversity and mystique in my dragons. I love how deep the author goes into the biology too. The pearl thing is cool. Solid A. Star Dragon. Despite how weirdly hypersexual that book was, I think the dragons here were a great idea. Star dragons are beings made out of plasma who can navigate space with these electrosensory organs covering their body, I think. I'm not touching that book again because of how much zero gravity dick there was. I'm giving them a middle C because while I think space dragons are a cool concept, I just wish we saw more than like 3 pages of them. Fruits Basket. Unfortunately, Hattori Soma is actually just a seahorse that gaslights people. Apparently this is a sign that the curse is weakening, but come on! Into the F tier he goes. I'm putting him lower than Rand al'Thor because I would argue he's even less of a dragon. At least Rand al'Thor can explode things. A Game of Thrones. I have only ever read the first book and never seen the TV show, therefore I have only seen the dragons as hatchlings. I'm adding them to the Judgment Reserve section because while I have encountered them, I want to read more of these books before I say anything final. Fablehaven. In Fablehaven, dragons are highly intelligent monsters that can paralyze humans with a gaze and turn into humans and use breath weapons. There's a variety of them, and not all of them are pure good or evil. However, most are still psychotic and inhuman to some extent. I like that. I'm giving them an A. Spiderwig. Wait, hang on. There were dragons in Spiderwick? I do not remember them at all, apart from maybe some bit about the water table being poisoned. Judgment Reserve. The Banned and Banished. Here, dragons bond with mer people, but with legs, and form psychic connections. At one point, a mer person fuses with a pirate and a dragon, and causes a statue of a different dragon to come to life. That's awesome! I'm giving them a B. I'm not a fan of the Narnia books. They're not subtle at all. However, I do like the dragon here. Eustace steals gold from a dragon's hoard and he wakes up in the form of a dragon. He's still the same kid, but he's now cursed with the body of a dragon and is ultimately healed by Aslan. I know it's a metaphor for Christ healing you from greed or something. That's one of the reasons I don't like Narnia, actually. Everything's a metaphor and dragons are a surface level metaphor for greed. And they're portrayed as being a bad thing to be. Low C tier. Dragon Keeper. I only ever read the first 2 books. There was too much piss, so I had to stop. All I really remember is that these longs are talking shapeshifters and the kid dragon pees a lot. I think that they could only be taken care of by people of a certain bloodline, but it's been years since I've read that series. I'm going with a C tier because this felt like your standard fare longs. How to Train Your Dragon. You missed a lot if you only ever watched the movies. In the books, these dragons even had their own language. Even though it was just a kind of bastardized English, I'm still giving it cool points. Dragons here are mostly small trainable critters who often get into mischief. There are so many types of dragon and so many different personalities a dragon can have. Some are big, some are small, some are adorable, and some are a nightmare. I love it. However, the smartest dragon seems to be about as smart as the average human, and there's not really much mystique around them. A tier though. Dragonlance. Here, dragons can be the most chaotic, evil beasts you can find, or kindly gods who will send you to find a bunch of platinum discs that are buried underground and will change the course of your world's religion and history. Huh. That sounds familiar. Dragons appear when there is a power imbalance, and you can kill them using a thing called a Dragonlance. One of my favorite dragons here is Matafleur, who is a senile mother dragon who kidnaps a village and treats them all like her children until she dies saving them from another dragon. I cried so hard when I read that. S tier. Wizard of Oz. If you haven't read past book 1, you missed out. Dragonettes are long-lived dragons who hibernate underground for most of the time, only coming out every 100 years or so. If you wake them up from this, they will be very cross with you. They're all descended from the original dragon who lives in a tube that bisects the planet. They are also intelligent enough to speak and are more crocodilian than your average dragon. They don't really appear much, but I remember them and their lore, and that's what matters. B tier. Dragon Breath. This is a slice of life series about a dragon in middle school. I don't really remember Danny Dragonbreath doing much hoarding, magic, or anything a middle schooler wouldn't do. D tier dragon, but good middle grade series. Journey to the West. In Journey to the West, dragons are your standard Chinese longs. One was turned into a horse, and another is a minor sea god, for instance. Both of these are friends with Sun Wukong and come in clutch whenever he needs them. In my opinion, the horse dragon had no right to keep himself in an inferior shape when he could just be a cool, powerful dragon mount for the majority of the journey. I get that it's an atonement to Kuan Yin for a prior sin, but what is it with atonement causing dragons to not be dragons anymore? I'm saying B because, while that bit's annoying, the Sea Dragon God's pretty cool. After all, he gave Sun Wukong his polearm. Lair of the White Worm. Oh boy, my least favorite work of classic literature. So here, there is supposedly a Wyrm dragon, though Bram Stoker spells it like the bug. Do we see it? Barely. An old man flying a kite has more screen time than the Wyrm. Also, the Wyrm is defeated by said kite. D tier, below Jabberwocky. Percy Jackson. There are several dragons here, at least in the books that I've read. Most are Greek-style dracons, which are more serpentine. There are also dracaena, which are basically nagas. There is one that guards the Golden Fleece, several that invade Manhattan, a hydra who is kind of a metaphor for franchising, and a metal dragon that dies and is resurrected as a boat. There is also an apocalyptic serpent, Apophis, in the Kane Chronicles. Most of our dragon representation is animalistic brutes, but Festus the metal dragon is smart, and Apophis is deadly intelligent. I love the variety here, so I'm giving them an A. Middle-earth. There are more dragons in Middle-earth than just Smaug. We had several dragons who were made by Morgoth as war mounts for his army of evil Maiar. Smaug is the last of these, if I recall correctly, and is intelligent and greedy, taking over a mountain and encrusting himself with gold and gems. He's probably the origin of most modern Western dragon depictions. The dragons here were deeply impactful on modern Western literature, but I think they deserve a low B, because while they're intelligent and there's a lot of variety and mystique around them, they're bitch-made enough to die out within a few thousand years of being created. Discworld. There are a few types of dragon in Discworld. Most larger, scary, treasure-hoarding dragons are very rare due to the fact that their sheer improbability consumes a lot of magic, and therefore they just hibernate in a pocket dimension that looks like MC Escher's nightmares. Most dragons in Discworld are actually a smaller swamp dragon who like to explode. While both types are certainly unique, and also, while I love Discworld, I think that the dragons here are high D tier at best. They're not very smart, and they often just explode to death, and the cool ones almost never show up. Beowulf. Let's finish with a classic. Here we have the first recorded English literary instance of a fire-breathing dragon. The dragon attacks Beowulf's kingdom, so he teams up with his friend Wiglaf in order to kill him. The dragon dies, but takes Beowulf with him, which is a fitting end for this hero's life. I think, as an English major, I am legally obligated to give this dragon an A. Without him, we wouldn't have Smaug, Toothless, or even D&D as a concept. If you made it this far, congratulations. You're probably either really annoyed by my choices, or generally agree with me, or you just like my voice. Whatever the case, thank you. Go bake yourself some ginger snaps, you deserve it. I can't wait to talk about more dragons. The next video will be about Asian dragons, and I mean dragons from all of Asia, not just Longs and Tatsus. So we'll be talking about a lot of cool stuff. I've been Alien Daydreamer, and I am out. Bye!